Alrighty, I am running the Unity Labs project, which you can get for free from the asset store. Just search Unity Space Labs. It's a pretty big download if you start downloading it now. And so what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to give you guys so the session today is about sound effects, and we're going to be looking at the new mixer system in Unity 5 and also the new audio effects that work with that mixer, and we're going to use it with a focus on sound effects. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through this Unity Labs project a little bit and show you what's going on with the audio here, and then we'll break out and do like a small little scene setup with a focus on audio effects. So it should be pretty fun. And so let's just do a quick run through of the scene. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the audio mixer in front. We'll put the main mixer up so that we can see it. This is our boy, Dr. Charles Francis. And so we have this little waypoint system telling us where we can go. And as you can hear in the background, we've got some ambience. I recommend if you're not wearing headphones, you might want to throw some of those on. We've got some little beeping noises and stuff. As we walk, you can hear those metallic footsteps. He's on that sort of diamond grid metallic flooring. And those are going to change as we walk on different materials and into different environments. So it's suggesting that I ride the elevator here. Let's do that. We've got some jamming little elevator music here. And you can hear, right, we've got now some notably different sounding footsteps, right, for this lower level. If we go into the gym, you can hear we've got this very, very heavy sort of echoey, reverby kind of sound. And this is achieved using the audio effects in the mixer and snapshots. And that's one of the effects that I'm going to show you guys today. Let's just teleport back upstairs. You can hear them fading out as we go. So down here, right, this is, and let's actually pause. So down here, this is the audio mixer view, right? And so this is a window. You can open under Window, Audio Mixer, or you can just double click here in the audio folder under Mixers, the Audio Mixer asset. So if I double click Main Mixer, it will open that. Now, what's cool about this is that we can have, in this case, we have Main Mixer, which has several other mixers nested inside of it. So we can really get a high degree of control over our audio signal flow by chaining together mixers. So let's look at that footstep example that I was starting to show you. So here we've got the main mixer, right? And what we have over here are what are called groups. You might also refer to these as channels, but in the case of Unity, we call them groups because they do a little bit more than a normal audio mixer channel would do, including be able to control the pitch and a few other things. But so here, every mixer starts with a master channel, and we'll make a new mixer later on so you can see this. The master is the final output stage for that mixer. If we look over here, we can see that all of these other groups are all children of the main mixer. And what that means is that their signal, let's say if we take the footsteps group here, is going to route from the footsteps group into the master group. And so all of these, ambient goes into master, music and chamber goes into master, and so on. So let's take a look at the foot mixer, and we can see that this itself has, and we can actually see right here gray in the parenthesis, the group that this is being routed into, right? So this is going into footsteps of main mixer, right? Which is here. So if we look at the foot mixer, we can see that we've got these 5 different groups, right? And they're each corresponding to a material. And so this is the way that we're managing our main character, Dr. Charles Francis, his footsteps across different materials. So if we unfold so we have here just a bunch of kind of holder game objects. So this is just an empty game object called characters that has the buddy bot, the little robot that flies around, a start position for the scientist, and then character scientist here. Character scientist has a scientist audio child object, which is another holder object, which contains these 5 audio sources, each of which is responsible for playing a different footstep sound, which is accurate for the material that our character is walking on, right? So I'll just play the scene for a second, and we can watch as I walk on the different flooring. So watch the mixer as I walk across the different flooring types. So there's our metal heavy. There's our glass. Woohoo. There's our rubber surface, right? And notice we've got this kind of extreme reverb because we're now in this big space, right? If we go back into the hallway, or let's say go onto the metal, right, we can hear there's the metal now being sent into that big reverb as well. And we're going to look at how to create an effect similar to that. Now, what's happening here is that we are changing the balance of the mix and the effects processing of the mix using what are called snapshots. So the snapshots are over here, and we can use these to change, for example, the settings of the audio effects. In this case, we're processing all of the footsteps are going into the master group of our foot mixer, and then we're processing them with this echo and SFX reverb, which we are changing using a snapshot. So let me just unpause. If I want to change this, I need to click Edit in Play Mode, and then now we've got the acoustic settings for the audio effect settings for the control room, right? The reverb is gone. If I go back to the gym, we can hear that big reverberant space. And so all that we need to do here is just to create a new snapshot. Here's Step Reverb Gym copy. It will be based on the current settings. And let's say if I wanted to just have maybe just the echo and no reverb, I'll just go in here. Oh, actually, no, let's not do it that way. I'll go in here and just turn off the reverb. Burp. I think that should be good. Yeah, so we can hear that little bit of echo without the cavernous reverb, right? And now that's in our copy snapshot. If we want to go back, we can just click on that snapshot to return to it. So let me just take a quick look at the chat, see how everybody's doing, make sure nothing is going horribly wrong while I'm yakking away. All right, let's keep going. So what I want to do, okay, so what I'm going to show you is, so we just saw the idea, right, that we have these different audio effects, right? We have an echo effect and a reverb effect on the master, and they're processing the output of these 5 groups, right, which are all running through the master, and then we're changing it with snapshots, right? And so the way that we change snapshots at runtime, so I'm just clicking them, right? So here in the editor, we click on the gym snapshot, and then we click on the control room snapshot, and the reverb goes away, right? But obviously, at runtime, we're going to want to do this via scripting. So if we look in the hierarchy, we'll see there's an audio holder object, and within it, there's mislabeled snapshots. There's an object called snapshots, and let's say we look at the gym center snapshot. So I'm going to go over to the scene view, and I'm actually going to switch to wireframe mode just so that we can see this a little bit more clearly. So I'm going to push F to frame selected on the gym center snapshot, and then so we can see there's this green cube around the rubber mat area of the gym, right? And so what this is, over here we can see it's basically just a box collider that's set to is trigger, and it's got two scripts on it: transition to snapshots on player entry and transition to snapshots on player exit. And so what we're doing here, let me open this up in MonoDevelop. So it's actually a really simple script. We just have make sure that you're using UnityEngine.audio, that you have the namespace. Oh, let me blow up MonoDevelop real quick before you guys start howling in the chat. 1, 2, 3. That should be good. So make sure if you want to use snapshots, the audio mixer snapshot type, that you're using UnityEngine.audio, that you've got that namespace declaration. And then here we have a public list of audio mixer snapshots called snapshots. And the audio mixer snapshots are an asset type which are a part of the audio mixer asset. So if we look at mixers and expand, we'll see these things with the kind of circle icon. Those are snapshots. So they're part of the audio mixer. And so really all we're doing here is we've got our list of snapshots, and then we've got a public float over time, a public variable of the type float called over time. The time is how long it's going to take to transition to that snapshot once on trigger enter is called, right? So basically our player collides with this box. Where was it? Gym center. Here we go. So our player collides with this box, and then we're going to transition to the gym close snapshot of ambient mixer, right? And so what we're doing is we're just checking if not other.compareTagPlayer. So basically, if the object that collided with this trigger was not tagged player, we're going to return, meaning this code is not going to be executed. And then if the player did collide with the trigger, or if the object was tagged player, we're going to say for each snapshot. So we're declaring a new variable snapshot in snapshots. And then so basically for any snapshots we have in the list, in this case we only have one, we're going to run down and we're going to call the transition to function from that snapshot, right? From each one in the list. So we're going to call snapshot dot transition to and pass in over time for the amount of time to transition to that. If you want another example of using the transition to function, I did a training a couple of weeks ago on adding music, adding interactive music to your game, which uses the exact same workflow. It's a snapshot, and then you fade it in when the player collides with the trigger. So this is one way to handle it. Now, I know in preparing for this, I was talking to some of my colleagues, the guys who made this demo, and they were saying that there is discussion and there's stuff in the works to make some other features for controlling the mix beyond just setting up snapshot volumes and doing transition to. So he wanted me to kind of mention that there's other stuff coming. This is not the be-all and end-all of the way that we're going to automate our mix, but for now this works and it's pretty cool. So, and that's actually how the audio is done in labs. So just wanted to draw your attention to that. So basically if we go through the scene, I'll just zoom out a little bit, we'll see that we have a number of, like, here's hallway audio snapshot, and let me just we'll see if we can get this into view and then switch back to shaded. Basically you'll see in each of these sort of doorways, there's so much stuff in here, not static objects, not lighting, none of this. control room rear snapshot, right? We can kind of see there's this invisible box, which when you walk through it is going to transition the mix for the rear of the control room. And that could be fading up the levels on certain audio sources, or as I showed you, changing the effects, and so on. Let me just have a look at the chat, see how you guys are doing. All right, so that is a real quick look through, and then so that's like how the footsteps are being done using the different audio sources in Transition 2. We've also got a bunch of just ambient sources, right? This is just an empty game object that just has just a kind of ambience for the control room. Let's get him back to the control room. It fades in. I'll just turn it off and on. And nothing. Where's it coming from? Is it over here? But you can hear, like here we just transition from one ambience to another. Let's see if we turn this up. Gym, main hall ambient. Let's see if we can find it. I'm sure they're layering and combining these two. Yeah, there you go. So that's the main drone. So there's a couple layers. Yeah. And it's adding a lot to the scene, right? There's no music going here. There's just this kind of ominous machine sound in the background. I think there's a computer one too. Let's go look. Bleep, bleep, bleep. That's something else anyway. But yeah, so, and these are all just audio sources that are placed in the scene and that are spreading throughout the scene and then are being managed using the ambient mixer. And we're just calling different snapshots, right? So as we go to a different snapshot, we're going to get different levels for each of these. Mainly, it looks like they're they're managing the levels, the audio levels of each, which is the attenuation effect. So they're treating actually the volume control as an effect. That's the first effect on each channel, on each group. I keep saying channels. Groups are what they're called in Unity. Channels in other audio software. It's similar but different. Okay. So what we're going to do next for our next half hour is we are going to just set up a really simple little scene using a couple of these assets. So I'm going to make a new scene. I won't save this. And we're going to call this... Well, we don't need to save it right away. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab a model, which is going to be, we're going to use that floor mat from the gym. So we're going to do gym. Where is it? Gym box. Is that the one? I think so. No. Gym plate. That's what I want. All right, so we're going to grab this gym plate, drop it in just here at the origin, 000. We're going to set the tag on it to rubber. This is the way that they're checking the material that the character is standing on. They're raycasting down from his feet and checking what the tag is of the model that he's standing on or the game object he's standing on. So we're going to tag this to rubber so that we trigger the rubber footstep sounds. Okay, so we'll tag that, and then we're also going to set the layer to collision. And we need to add a collider to this because it's just a model, it's not a prefab. So let's go add component, and if you type mesh, you'll get a mesh collider. We're going to add that in, and that should allow our player to not fall through this gym mat. And then what we're going to do is we're going to grab a camera rig. We're going to go to prefabs, cameras, follow camera rig. Drop that in. Doesn't really matter where you drop it for now. Actually, no, let's put it at 0. It doesn't matter. It's going to follow the player once we get it in. But and then what we're going to do, we're going to enable it because it comes in disabled. We're going to set it active. And then at the bottom of the hierarchy is an object called camera mount. And we're just going to drag our main camera onto that. And then we're going to take the main camera and zero it out. So it's going to be 0, 0, 0. So it'll be directly on top of the camera rig. And you'll notice that at the top of the hierarchy, at the follow camera rig, there's a follow object script, which has a target of the type transform, a variable target of the type transform, and that's going to be the thing that this object is going to follow, and that's going to be our player. So let's drop in our player. We're going to go to characters, character scientist, drop him in. We'll zero him out as well. Push F to frame selected and set him active. There he is, handsome devil. I'll move him up so he's not going through the ground. And then we're going to assign the target. So we're going to drag him in to the target field of the follow camera rig here. And he also has setup and user input variable. This is just, I think, kind of game manager type thing. I haven't actually looked at this too closely, but anyway, we need to drag in the camera rig and the main camera. Drag those both into the camera rig and main camera slots, and hopefully I've done that all correctly. Let's give it a try. So now when we play, yeah, looks good. So now we can move around. Camera follows him. We can hear. We've got our footsteps. Now these are currently still being run because in the prefab under rubber audio, this is routed to the mixer, right? And the mixer is an asset in the project. It's not in the scene, right? So we haven't actually changed anything about our audio setup yet. We just loaded the prefab, which is already rigged up to the audio. So we're going to change that in a moment. The first thing I want to do, this is a little bit nerdy, but so right now we're just kind of floating in space with the skybox, right? I want to add some reverb and echo, but with a totally open space like this, there would be no reverb or echo, right? Because there's nothing to bounce off of. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simulate a sort of matrix-like huge white room. So we're going to set the background for the camera to solid color and set the color to white. So now we can pretend there are some large, far away white walls that we can't see, but that we can use to simulate our reverb reflections. And there's going to be nothing to tell us that, you know, the walls are too close or too far away to destroy the acoustic illusion. All right, so now that we got that, that's our kind of basic setup. Let's do some audio stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new, actually, let me check the chat real quick first. We're going to make a new mixer. So let's go audio, mixers, create, audio mixer. And we'll call this demo mixer. And double click it to open it. And so now you'll see it appears in our list of mixers, right, along with main mixer. It's got no fold out because it's got no child mixers. And all it has is the master group, right? So what we're going to do is add a group, which we'll call footsteps. And we're going to route our rubber footsteps into this footsteps group. So let's open up our scientist, go to the rubber audio game object, and go to the audio source attached to that. And we're going to click on the output parameter and go to our demo mixer, master footsteps. Double click on that to choose it. And now we can test. Yep. Got quite a bit louder, right? Let's turn it down, maybe -6. And so, okay, so we've got our footsteps going into our new mixer. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add, let's start by adding some reverb. Now, the way that the reverb was done in the main project is a little different from what I'm going to show you. They were using the wet-dry mix on the main effects. So the effects were applied to the master, and they were just fading up and down the amount of effect. I'm going to show you how you can create a separate channel or a separate group with just the reverb signal on it, which is I think the approach that I would prefer, and is maybe a little bit more of an industry standard approach, depending on what you're trying to achieve, but I think this is a pretty good workflow for this kind of thing. Let's say, for example, we've got this character in this scene, but then we want to add an enemy and process him with the same effect. Well, we wouldn't want to have to set up a copy of the effect, right? Because that would be laborious and also processor draining. If we use a send receive setup, we could just route the signal of the enemy into the receive channel. So that would be one kind of situation where this would be advantageous. Obviously in the main project, it's just this guy running around. So, okay. So what we're going to do is in groups, we'll highlight the master. We're going to make a new group that's going to be a child of the master. And we're going to call this reverb return. Whoops. Reverb return, if I can type. There we go. All right, and so on the reverb return, so first of all, we're going to add what's called a send. And this is an audio effect, so we're just clicking on the add button here and choosing send, and we're adding the send to our footsteps. So we're going to send a copy of our footsteps audio signal to our reverb return, which is going to pick it up using a receive. So if you've worked with audio before, you may be used to calling these send and return, which is why I called the group return, just because I'm used to that too. But in Unity, it's called a receive. We have send, which sends the signal, and receive, which receives the signal. Let's turn this one down to the same level as well. And so now what we're going to do is so right now what we've got is the send is sending its signal to nowhere, right? So if we highlight the group, we can see the effects on the group. And over here, the receive is set to none. So nothing is happening right now. We're going to choose reverb return / receive as our destination. Now, a send level appears. This is the volume of the duplicated signal. How much additional signal are we going to add to our mix and return via this group, right? So how loud is the signal going to be coming out of the receive from the footsteps group? So let's turn it all the way up to start. This is a little on the extreme side, but is just for demo purposes. We can turn it back down later, but you're going to hear the effect strongly this way. So let's test now. So now we can see not only do we have the signal in footsteps, but it's duplicated in reverb return. And if I edit in play mode and turn the send level back down, it goes away, right? So hopefully that is fairly intuitive, right? So this is a fairly powerful tool for controlling the routing and the signal flow of our audio signal in our mixer. Now, just duplicating the signal is pretty boring, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to add a reverb effect. Now, the super short explanation of what reverb is, what it does is it simulates the acoustic reflections of sound bouncing off things in the environment. So we have, let's say I clap my hands in a church, the vibrations leave my hands, travel through space, bounce off, let's say, the stone surfaces of the church, and then bounce off one wall and then bounce off the other and bounce all around and create this. It's like a kind of cloud of echoes. It's this complex pattern of bouncing sounds, which turns into this kind of wash of sound. And so we're going to simulate that using this SFX reverb effect. So we're going to choose add and select SFX reverb. We can test it. So not a big change on first test. What we're going to do is we're going to tweak these settings a little bit. Now, I'm not going to go through every single setting. I'm not going to go through every single setting here, but a couple things specific to using sends and receives. You always want to set your dry level to 0. That's because the dry level is the original signal, which we have already going in the footsteps. So we don't need to duplicate. So we want to keep the dry level all the way down because we don't need in the reverb return to duplicate the dry signal. We just want the affected or wet signal, the reverb signal. So we're going to turn that all the way down. I'm going to turn up the room, which is the initial short reflections. I'm going to turn that all the way up. I'm going to turn the reflections all the way up, and I'm going to turn the reverb is up. Okay, let's test that. There we go. Very realistic, right? Now, let's tweak this a little bit. So we'll go edit in play mode. one of the key parameters in a reverb effect is the decay time. It's how long the reflections are going to take to die off. By making it longer, we're going to create the impression that we're in a larger space. Not bad. This is still very loud, right, reverb-wise, because we've got that send level turned all the way up. But let's just tweak it a little bit there. So I'm just going to, since we're in the matrix, right, let's go just huge. Giant reverb. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower the low frequencies. So we have room low frequencies down here. I'm just going to turn this down, and we can control where those frequencies are below, in this case, using this number. This is 250 hertz in frequencies. So it's basically the sub bass, or bass and sub bass. There we go. Maybe a little bit more bass. And to be clear, these are not parameters invented by Unity. This is actually the Fmod reverb, and these are pretty standard reverb parameters. So if you're interested in learning more about reverb and sound design, you can Google pretty much any of these terms and get a good definition. It's not strictly speaking what the session is about, so I'm not going to go exhaustively through them. But those are a couple of places to start, and you could just kind of tweak them to get something that you like the sound of. Let's now dial in the level of our reverb return. I'm going to pull it down. I'm sorry, of our send. It's a little too much. Okay, obviously sort of quite unrealistic, but kind of fun. Okay, so that is sort of basics of send, receive, and reverb. Now what we're going to do, how am I doing time-wise? Okay, let me take a little chat check break before I talk about echo, which I'm going to do next. All right, let's keep going. So what we're going to do is we are going to make another... We're going to add another effect, and we're going to do it using the same setup. We're going to add an echo. So we're going to go to Master, make another group with the plus button. Oh, I got to leave play mode. It's going to be called Echo Return. And that's, again, running into Master. And then we're going to add a receive. Now, worth noting here, I'm going to add an echo. Just saying... Supposing I did this wrong, the effects are processed in vertical order, right? So if I put the echo here and the receive here, I would be getting dry signal into receive, and it wouldn't be processed by the echo, right? That's something that might go wrong as you guys are trying to follow along. So make sure that the receive is above any effects that you want to process the signal that are below it, right? So it's a sequential processing of the effect. So the attenuation gets applied, then we get the signal from the receive, and then that is in turn processed by the echo. All right, so can we put it before the attenuation? No. Oh yeah, we can. Yeah. Wait, let me see. Can we do that? Yeah. That's kind of interesting. So you could do like pre-fader, post-fader stuff with that if you wanted to. Okay, so we've got our receive, and we're going to add a second send to our footsteps, right? Here we're going to assign the receive, the destination, choose echo return receive, and we're going to turn up the level. Let's turn it up somewhere around the same, and test. So we can hear footsteps echoing off into the distance. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tweak that a little bit. Let's go to edit and play mode. I don't know why I keep pausing. We don't really need to do that. We can stop. We'll go to the echo. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to make the delay, which is the time in milliseconds between repetitions. I'm going to make it a little longer. Let's do maybe 750-ish. And the decay oh, we're going to turn the dry mix all the way down, right, as we did with the reverb. So we're getting the dry signal from here and only the wet affected signal from the return track, right? So dry mix at 0. And then the decay is how many repetitions we get, right? It's also you'll also see it labeled feedback if you're in a digital audio workstation. So what we'll do is we're going to turn this down a little bit. We don't need quite as many repetitions. There we go. And in fact, we can turn down the send amount a little bit too. We don't want to make it so obvious. It's a little too subtle. And you can adjust these sends by clicking down here as well. That's not bad. Obviously, it's totally strange sounding, right? But kind of cool. Okay, the other thing that I'll just show you, just to throw one other effect on the pile, is what's called a high-pass filter. I'm going to take some of the bass out of those echo repetitions. So I'm going to go add high-pass simple. And I'm just going to put it up between the echo and the receive. So the receive is going to come in here. We're going to cut out low frequencies and allow high frequencies to pass with the high pass, and then feed that process signal to the echo. So here, everything above 1000 hertz, which is in the mid-range, is going to pass, and everything below is going to get cut off. That's going to be too much. We can hear how that sounds. I'll turn the send way up just so we can hear it. Yeah, it's not bad. It's pretty high. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this down a bit lower so we get some more of the bass. Let's do maybe 650. It's obviously really really loud. I think somewhere in that 600 range. And then obviously turn it way down. And I think we need a little bit less decay. It's like a little too epic. Cool. So, and then of course we could make snapshots and control that with snapshots if we wanted to. But I just wanted to show you guys a little bit of some of those mixer routing tools, the send and receive effects, the reverb and the echo. Hopefully that gives you some cool stuff to play around with. And there's plenty of other effects in here. We've got duck volume, which is like a sidechain compression, low pass, which is the opposite of a high pass, flanging, which is mix in a delayed copy of the signal, distortion, normalize, parametric EQ, pitch shifter. You can look these up in the docs. And also, pretty much all of these are standard DAW style things. So if you look up audio compressor or audio chorus effect, you'll find a wealth of information about it. These are not Unity things; they're general audio processing things. So you'll have there's plenty of ways to learn about those. So I'm not going to go into detail here. But thanks very much for checking this out. I'm going to hang out in the chat and answer some questions. Hopefully this has been helpful and interesting. And yeah, thanks for watching. All right, let me just take a quick look at that. So what he's trying to do, since the chat doesn't seem to be blowing up too hard, what he's trying to do is he's trying to control. So there's two ways. Let me just drink some water. There's two ways to control the mixer via script. One is using snapshots, which is going to control the whole mixer. Now, let's say you wanted to control a single parameter directly, like the send level on this, for example. What we can do, let's see, oh, maybe not. Where is it? There we go. Okay. Okay, so here, if you right-click on the parameter name, you should be able to expose mix level of footstep send to script. If you click that, it'll appear here in this list of exposed parameters. It gets named by default my exposed param, and what I would call it is reverb send. Now that's a string. I know Kirkusen that you're not a programmer, so this might be a little bit of gibberish to you, but that's a string, so it's very important that you type it correctly. And then you should be able to just send a floating point value to that using the setFloat API command and set it directly. Now, importantly, when you set a parameter using setFloat, it's taken out of the snapshot system. It won't be controlled by snapshots until you... there's another API command I can't remember where you return it to snapshot control. I don't remember what it is. But anyway, yeah, so you're going to set it with setFloat. So do I want to attempt this live on the stream? Let me see what the other questions are. But that's the basics. And I'll link you a video that I did about this. If you just Google or YouTube search exposed parameters, I did a whole 10-minute video about this. Let me try and see if I can make this work real quick. I'm going to, let's create a new slider. See if we can make a slider on screen to control the send amount. This is potentially risky. I might fail, but it's fun to try things, right? Okay, so what we want is, let's call this audio control, and then we're going to add a component. New script, set send, create an add. Let's see if we can do this. So we're going to add the namespace declaration using UnityEngine.audio. And then we're going to have a public audio mixer called mixer. And we'll have a public function that returns void called setSendLevel, and it's going to have a float level. And then we'll, within there, we'll call mixer.setFloat. Oh, let me look at the reference for this. Mixer.setFloat, yeah, and then the name, which was what? What did I call it? Reverb send. Oh, error finding parameter path. Whoops. That might be the issue there. That might be the problem. That might be a bug, actually. Let me just try it. That might be a bug. Okay, we'll take the slider. I mean, this is you could use this to set up your slider. We're going to add a public function, drag in audio control, and then we select set send. We're going to select the dynamic float set send level, right? That's our function. And on audio control, we're going to drag in our audio mixer. But it seems like that might be a bug, actually. Demo mixer. Let's just test it out. Oh no, it looks like it's working. See, reverb return just went up. Now I just need to set my slider to be between, what's the range of values here? 0 and -80. Slider, min value is going to, the max value, min value is going to be -80, max is going to be 0. Let's try it. Yeah, it works. I did something that worked. No compile errors. All right, I'm going to fold up the mic, and I'll just hang out in the chat for a little longer. But yeah, thanks, everybody. Great to see you all. Come back next week, same time, you know, starting an hour and 15 minutes ago, wherever that is, whatever time that is where you are. It's 3 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, 8 p.m. Britain, GMT. I don't know the rest of the world. Thanks, guys.